Hello and welcome to Board Now's film reviews, and on this video I will be reviewing Crawl, the Asian Aja film, the new horror release starring Kaya Scodelario. I'll go with Scodelario, the one who used to be in Skins basically. But I'm back. This was one of the big Fright Fest premieres, and I've just been to see it tonight. It's been on general release for just over a week, and I'm gonna get into it. It's basically set all in the one location, or mostly in the one location, and that is the swamps of Florida. And at the start of the film, it's sort of set up then the lead character is a swimmer. She's been a swimmer since a very young age, so she has that competitive nature, but also it sort of weighs her down. At the start of the film, we see like a flashback of her in a big sort of swim event at a young age, and her father's like the coach, sort of coaches her, and things don't go quite to plan. So then that sort of weighs down on her from that moment forward, and her father, always a big supporter of her, always like sort of giving her these pep talks. He calls her like the apex predator, stuff like that. But that sets up, how important her past is going to be to the character and to this film. So in the present, basically there's been this massive storm in Florida. There's all houses are ruined and stuff. People are being evacuated. Sort of setting situation you can imagine, would happen on a fairly regular basis in Florida, that sort of location. And the character, the Kaya Scodelario character, can't find her father. He's gone missing. She's searching for him frantically. And she's told to turn away by this guy who's part of the police and the road police, and someone she's known a long time because he used to date her sister when they were much younger. So she's turn around, even though she says, my father's missing, I need to try and find him. But then obviously she does it anyway. She goes against the wishes, so she drives up to the house to try and find him. She can't find him, but then she swims a bit and she notices then he's basically down in the basement under the house, and he's in a bad way. He's been injured, like in the wreckage and stuff. So she tries to save him, but at the same time, and this is when the real horror element really comes in, basically the dam breaks and the local alligator farm is busted open, and the inhabitants are released and they go on a feast basically, and that rhymes. They smell prey, and that becomes the threat then. So it's all like condensed to mostly this one location. So them in the basement of the house, which is flooded, the alligators have been released. So it's that tension, her trying to escape, her trying to get her father to safety. There's also a dog, like she has a dog, so I guess that's an extra little emotive sort of thing. But the alligators obviously start coming for them. So yeah, it's about how can they escape sort of thing. And it's all, as I said, largely this one location, which I quite like. I think for a horror movie, that's always a good basic little setup and the tension and the Florida swamps, I think visually quite a good location. And I also like the little add-on of her being a swimmer and how that comes into play and how it becomes an arc for her, how she gets to use her swimming talent, but also the fact that it's almost like in trying to save her father, in trying to escape, it becomes like a hurdle for her in herself. It's almost like she can make up for losing out in the swimming event sort of thing. So it becomes a journey, it becomes like an emotional human sort of arc or journey. Not just to do with literally trying to save yourselves and the tension there. And there's also this idea that the father, played by Barry Pepper, who I've seen in quite a few things, there's also this sort of distance between them and that they haven't been that close in recent years. So I think this traumatic experience really brings them closer together and the bond. But it also brings up, the past and the fact that she's not Daddy's little girl anymore, or the fact that maybe he put a bit too much pressure on her as a swimmer, and the fact, because he's separated from the mother as well. But so there's stuff there. There's kind of back and forth, and skeletons are brought out of the closet, let's say, but they also, they bond as well and slowly come together again. So it is quite a nice little backstory, quite a nice little arc. And potentially this was an enjoyable little horror movie. So I think our Asian Aja, I think, has a pretty good history of balancing like fun, dumb B movies with obviously actual scary horror, tense horror. So I mean, Switchblade Romance, which was his debut from 2003, I believe, was really amazing. I mean, it really stood out as a distinct film. It was a bit of a throwback to like 70s sort of slasher movies. It had a real craft to it and real characters you could invest in. But it was interesting. I think even in that film, as accomplished as it was, I think there was sort of slocky sort of elements where it was having a bit of fun. I mean, the twist maybe you could say is a bit like that. And then obviously he's done. I mean, when you see that, there's sort of stranger choices like Piranha 3 Double D, which is worth it just for the name, to be fair. But I think choices like that and a film like Horns with Daniel Radcliffe, I think it does show that he does have a love for like B movies. And he does like to play between the two. I think he is a serious horror director, but also he does like to have a bit of fun and play up to the sort of cheesier elements of the genre. And I think that's a good way to think of this, because on the one hand it has that sort of Jaws feel, and obviously whenever you have this kind of plot, I think Jaws is always there in the background and it's like a big shadow over these films, and that's hard to get around. Jaws is such a masterpiece. These films can never really compete with it. But so there's that. There's the fact that it's this very intense sort of horror setup. The fact it's compressed to one location and you've got her fighting against the elements. So I mean, that's a classic sort of, as they call it, bottle movie. But there's also, as things progress, they do really hike things up, and they really go for it, and they start throwing a lot of stuff at this because it's quite a slow pace at first, and even like the early sort of scares are quite slowly managed, quite slowly paced. But yeah, they really pile on the thrills later in the film, and there's sort of twists thrown in, and so it does become a bit more silly, a bit more of a tongue-in-cheek B movie, and I think you can see him having some fun. I mean, maybe he overdoes it a little bit, to be honest, but overall, I'm positive on it, Cruel. I think it is a tense film. There's some really well handled jump scares. I think you have a really credible lead as well. I think Karo Sadako is really impressive. She has this vulnerability. She's very grounded, but I think what makes her stand out is the fact that she is such a physical presence, and she really builds herself up. She's really physically the part. And what her character reminds me of is a bit like Ripley in Aliens, where she does have this sort of masculinity to her, and she's a real powerhouse of a performer. Again, I think the fact that she's a swimmer sort of thing, an athlete, really comes into it. So by the end of the film, she's really determined, she's really psyching herself up, and it's a very, very physical performance, the way she sells the whole thing. So she's a great lead, so I think she definitely adds something in the lead role. And I do quite like the relationship with the father and the backstory. I think what that does instantly, the fact that she's got the swimmer thing and the whole history with the father, I think it immediately gives her a character. It immediately, it makes it interesting, a bit different. It obviously puts an angle on this, but it also means she's got a hurdle to get over. The fact she wants to prove herself as a swimmer, the fact she has this exchange relationship with her father. So it gives her a character immediately and makes her interesting to the viewer. And it's a nice little twist on things, and they have some good scenes, her and Barry Pepper. But I think she's certainly based on this. I know she was in Skins originally and a few different things. I think she's a really fine actress. She's really watchable. She's got a presence and can do a lot of different things. But yeah, I think she was a good choice for the lead and sells the movie really well, as does some of the thrills. So there's some good jump scares. I mean, the first time the alligators are introduced, when she's down in the basement and about to try and escape, and then suddenly one jumps out at her, really it catches you off guard, and it's sort of a surprise. And there's some really well timed jump scares, and I mean, some of them you might see coming more than others, but they are sort of well timed, and he knows how to do them. Another thing is, I think the alligators, they look really good. They look really menacing. I'm assuming it was maybe a CGI effect. So I think they are good. The CGI is of a good quality. As I said, they do look very menacing and they do look realistic. So that's a good job with them. And I think certainly for a while it's a very tense film. There's some good fun in there. There's a good relationship with the father and daughter. So it ticks a lot of the boxes. I think I do have a couple of things against it. One thing is, I would say they maybe could have used the Florida setting a bit better. They maybe didn't do enough with it. They could have expanded on it a bit more. I think also I mean, this is just a thing, but I guess because it's a flood and that, but they really seem to overdo it with the rain. The rain just seems like this sort of movie sort of rain that just comes down. It just looks a bit false. I mean, I don't doubt that potentially Florida could have that sort of rain. It is what it is. It's just something I noticed. And I think also eventually they do sort of run out of ideas a bit. I think it's hard to keep up such a simple premise for so long. I mean, the film is short. It's like 87 minutes long, which is like a B movie running time. So it was right to. I think that's about the right length, but they still struggle a little bit in the latter half, I think, to really keep it going, to keep the suspense going. So I think, as I said, they do start throwing in these twists and quite a few moments where they think they've escaped, sort of thing. So, for example, at one point she's able to swim to the boat and she outswims the shark, gets to the boat, and she actually has quite a cool line where she says, "I'm a goddamn apex predator, alright." And she rescues the father and the sweet little dog. You know, you can't kill off the dog. But then, yeah, they do get sort of like the tide or whatever sort of pushes them back into the house, and they're back into danger. So there's a couple of moments like that. So I think they overdid that a little bit, you know. It's like, oh, another moment where they thought they escaped and then they're swept back into it, back into danger. But, you know, overall, I think it's a really solid movie. It has a lot of excitement, a lot of drama, a good sort of core concept. There's emotion from the lead performance. And it is a lot of fun. I think he does know how to have fun whilst putting together a tense, you know, horror movie. So overall, Crawl's pretty impressive. It's very solid at least. It's not anything mind blowing, but I think it does make the most of its premise. So overall, I give it a thumbs up. I'd recommend it. It's nothing mind blowing, but it's really worth watching. And yeah, he's had a bit of an up and down career, the director, but some odd choices in there. But I think he's shown that he likes doing a variety of film. I mean, I actually thought his remake of Hills Have Eyes was good. A lot of people seem down on that film, but I quite like the sort of 9/11 context it was sort of set around, and again you could see the talent. I think that's a film where the use of sound and tension was effective. I thought I can see why some people don't like it, but I thought The Hills Have Eyes, the remake, was pretty effective. Anyway, but he's obviously had this up and down career since, maybe considering I think the first two films he made were a bit more serious horror. Yeah, to then do quite cheesy sort of comedy horrors. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it maybe felt out of tone with what he'd been doing. So yeah, there's quite a few films of his where you think, oh, really? The director of Switchblade Romance did that. But yeah, when I heard he was doing this film and the premise, I thought, yeah, that should be decent. It's a 3-star film. It's very solid indeed. It has a lot going for it. It's not perfect. There are issues, but it is what it is at the end of the day. If you like that sort of movie, you're probably gonna enjoy this. It's a bit of a crowd pleaser, I think. It's quite accessible to a mainstream audience. So yeah, I give it about 3 stars around. I guess if I'm doing it out of 10, which I normally do with these film reviews, I'd say about a 6, a 6.5. It again, it is very solid. It does the trick quite well, and it's short, so it doesn't hang around long. So yeah, that's Cruel, which is on general release now. And if you've seen the movie, let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back with more movie reviews soon. In fact, this week I'm planning on seeing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, so I'll probably review that as soon as I've seen it, give my verdict. And coming up soon, the month of October, the month of goblins and ghouls and all things freaky and scary. So I will have some special extra movie reviews, some horror movie reviews for the month of October. I have some big plans, but that's been Cruel for now. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.